Over the past 10 years, more than 4,800 migrant workers were injured or killed in lorry accidents. This means that on average, at least one worker is injured or killed every single day. I'm sure all of you have seen workers sitting at the back of lorries like this. It was a daily mode of transport for Tofazal Hussain and Sugaran Sudishman. But on the morning of April 20th, their lorry collided with a stationary tipper truck. Both died from their injuries. In this episode, I want to find out exactly how dangerous it is to be transported at the back of a lorry and what it'll take to change the system. I'm starting my investigation here at construction firm PQ Builders. Pei Ke-pin is the man in charge. He employs more than 100 migrant workers and transports them daily from their accommodation to their various work sites in, you guessed it, lorries. Mr. Pei, why are lorries the preferred mode of transport for workers? How about the safety of the workers?
There is always a limit in terms of how affordable and how practical it is for the workers to be transported by bus and van. Eventually, maybe we may be able to move towards that direction, but as of now, it is still the most cost-efficient and most practical way. I would say that we have come a long way. In the past, lorry doesn't have railing and also doesn't even have canopy. So we have added the railing plus the canopy. And generally, by the LTA guidelines, there have been studies that the speed limit is another control.
So how much cheaper is using a lorry as compared to a bus and van?
It is not about the purchase cost. It is the multiple usage that we are able to deploy the lorries to carry materials and such. Say for example, if I buy a van, the van will just ferry the workers in the morning and in the night, right? But the rest of the day, I can't use it for really practical use for material transportation. But for lorry, it's always out transporting material because we have multiple sites. So the cost per usage is way, way lower than a van and a bus.
It's been illegal to transport passengers at the back of lorries since 1987, except when ferrying workers between their workplaces and their lodgings. According to the Road Traffic Act, these lorries, officially known as goods-cum-passengers vehicles, have to meet several requirements. For example, they must not travel faster than the road speed limit, or 60 kilometers per hour, whichever is lower. The front seat must be occupied before people can sit at the back. To prevent overcrowding, each worker must have a minimum seating area of 4 square feet. And if there's cargo, the lorry should carry fewer workers. When seated, no part of the worker should be more than 1.1 meters above the carriage deck. And lorries must always be fitted with canopies. Protective side railings should be at least 700 millimeters from the deck and 300 millimeters from the sideboard. These specifications are designed to keep a person up to 1.7 meters tall, comfortably seated in the back carriage. But some are saying it's not good enough. An online petition that has garnered more than 20,000 signatures says the laws are outdated and they reflect the double standards in our treatment of our migrant workers. I want to know exactly how dangerous it is to be ferried around at the back of a lorry. So I'm going to experience it for myself. I've asked some friends along. Because of safe distancing rules, we are going to ride separately. We'll be seated according to what the law stipulates.
Wow.
Okay. You're gonna hold on tight.
And then we're off. The lorry is being driven at 50 kilometers per hour along a few turns and bumps to simulate real road conditions. We're just starting out, and I already kind of need to hang on a fair bit.
Well, quite uncomfortable at the back.
Yeah.
Hitting your...
Right.
Oh my. And there's also like dust coming into your eye.
Oh boy, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa.
Whoa! I almost saw my producer fly out right there. Whoa! Woohoo! You can see with a little bit of speed, it does get quite hard to hang on. And this is only going at 50 km per hour.
Imagine if it's an highway.
After a few rounds, we're back.
All right. What a ride.
Okay, I'm good. Okay. Wow. How did you feel while you were on the lorry?
At first, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. But then in the middle of the circuit, when we were like swerving around and all, I felt like I was going to like fall off the lorry.
I thought it was going to be pretty cool, but after that, I don't think I'll do it again. Yes.
Why not?
There was nothing really in place, and if there was like a sudden jerk, there's like a really high chance that you would just like fly off.
At any point, did you feel like your life was at risk?
Yeah, I mean, at the times where he's going to jerk and brake, I really have to hold on. Whoa!
Because it's pretty open, in the event of any accident, the danger of you flying out of the vehicle is actually very big. And if there's equipment inside as well, there's a chance of you being crushed in it as well.
Do you think that the barricades and the railings, are they safe enough?
Definitely not.
The back of the lorry isn't really built for passenger sitting, so there isn't any handles, any seat belts, anything that for you to hold on tight.
So if your employer asks you to take lorry as a transport to and from work, would you say yes?
No, I have a wife, I have a son. Yeah, it's not worth the risk.
Definitely no.
I don't think anybody should be going to work this way.
Reality hit home for all of us seated at the back of the lorry today as we realized what many of our foreign workers have to go through daily. I found myself constantly looking for things to hold on to, especially during the turns and the sudden braking. It was literally like I was hanging on to my life on that railing. If it's already so dangerous on normal road conditions, what happens in the event of riskier scenarios like a near collision? I'm about to find out. Oh! I'm meeting transport safety engineer Professor Natarajan Krishnamurthy. He has been advising companies and the authorities on transport safety for more than 50 years. Today he's going to show me what happens if a lorry is involved in a near collision. So Prof. Krishna, I was sitting at the back of a lorry going at about 50 km per hour, and I was wondering to myself, are these measures really safe? Because I definitely didn't feel safe.
You're quite right, Ray. Compared to a bus or a van, a lorry is certainly more dangerous. For two reasons. One, structurally it is much weaker. Two, it's because it's exposed, people are thrown around, and lack of restraint will mean they will be thrown a lot inside.
What if I'm holding on to something to prevent myself from being thrown around? Would that work?
It depends. Normal traffic, normal stopping and starting, the holding handle is quite good. That's what we do in buses and MRT trains. But if there is an accident, then the force on the hand will be too much and the hold will be broken.
To show me what can happen if a lorry is involved in a near collision, Professor Krishna has arranged a demonstration. For this experiment, we're using 4 mannequins of varying heights. They're going to be our passengers at the back of the moving lorry. Our stunt driver will start the lorry suddenly to simulate getting hit from the back, swerve to simulate dangerous driving, and stop suddenly to simulate getting hit in the front. Oh! Ouch!
Yeah. You see, the one closest to the back fell over, and the one inside have also fallen over. This demonstrates how fragile the people inside are.
That really looked painful, man.
Yeah.
Someone call an ambulance. Oh, the swerve!
Falling.
Oh, man.
Exactly. Just as I predicted.
That really looks dangerous. Oh,
Sudden stop.
they're just flopping all over the back. Prof, could you explain to me what happened here?
When the driver starts suddenly, the acceleration is forward, and so the bodies fall backward. So if the body centroid is above the edge of the plate, then he actually falls out. Inside he will be pressed backwards. Then when he's driving around and turning the corner, there is an outward force called the centrifugal force. The bodies will be the opposite, so they will fall inwards. That is why many bodies fell over. Then when he stops suddenly there, it's a deceleration, so the bodies are thrown forward. So in all three, the bodies are moving around, they fall over each other, they hit the metal parts and they get hurt.
What you've just seen is a simulation. But Lee, a foreign worker who has been here for 14 years, experienced this. A few years ago, he was being ferried to work when the lorry he was in collided hard into a car. He has requested a phone interview as he doesn't want to be identified for fear that his employer would cancel his work permit for speaking out.
李先生，你可以跟我说你是怎么受伤的吗？
在落地上面，一个下落地的，它经过一个卡巴呀，卡巴那上面有一个档的那个栏杆，不是也有一个档嘛，有好几道岗，就是说它加落地加的有点太快了，过去那个岗就冲起来了，前面还有一道岗，里面带的我们坐的后面嘛，有很多的铁呀，曾经有2个伤到的，但是我伤到的是最厉害，我就碰到那个推拉式的一个那棚嘛。我站我都站不起来了，总感觉到不大对劲儿。我又去了医院，在那边做一下扫描，他说你这是属于是肌肉拉伤那种型的。真的很难，我不能一下子猛的一下子起来了，那不可以。人坐在后面确实是一种不安全的这种行为。
你有没有跟你的同事和朋友讨论这个坐萝莉的后面的话题？
我们是经常谈，但是等我们谈是没有用。老板是知道的，但后面坐的人是他也是知道这个因素，它不安全。那铁它都是不固定的嘛，没有固定的一个地方的嘛，它会飞的嘛。
这样，你的老板有没有超载工人？
有，确实是有，这个确实是有这种行为。
The rules state that all sidebars must be securely attached, and that lorries can only carry up to their maximum capacity if they are not used to transport equipment. So what Lee's boss did was actually against the law, and from what Lee tells me, these practices aren't unusual. It's a catch-22 situation. Lorries are unsafe for workers, yet they are the most cost-effective and convenient way to ferry them around. If I can't make companies give up lorries, I need to find a workable solution that will make the lorry a safer mode of transportation.
Yeah, at least it's quite steady, isn't it?
Singapore is not the only country which has a large migrant worker workforce. Countries like the UK and the US do too. How do they transport migrant workers to and from work?
From what I've found, it seems like there's no one standardized international regulation.
In densely populated cities like Vancouver, London, Taipei, and Hong Kong, riding at the back of lorries is strictly prohibited. For some areas that do allow ferrying of workers in lorries, there are strict restrictions in place. For example, in the state of California in the US, there must be a federally approved restraint system like seatbelts for passengers at the back. It's also the case in Bahrain, which, like Singapore, has a huge migrant worker population. About a third of its population is made up of migrant workers who used to be transported in lorries like these, until it was banned in May 2009. Today, migrant workers in Bahrain are generally transported in buses. Instead of waiting around for new laws to kick in Singapore, I want to explore potential safety solutions, but I'll need some help from an expert. Akbar Yunus is a creative technologist who's experienced in using design to solve real-world problems.
So Akbar, the prevailing danger of lorries is the vulnerability of passengers sitting at the back. So what can we do about that?
I can show you over here. So this is the lorry bed. We have to put some cushion here so that anyone who's sitting at the back of the cabin doesn't get injured when they hit the metal part of the back of the lorry. It's really unsafe. If a vehicle hits you from the back,
they'll probably just go flying out.
Yeah. So we would need to leave a gap or margin so that nobody sits right at the back of the lorry. Beyond that margin, we can put the passengers along the perimeter of the lorry bed. And lastly, the seat belts will go around them, something like this, so that they don't get thrown around. Okay, so what do you think, Ray?
I think we could work with this. Let's make it.
After some experimentation, our idea began taking shape.
This is the front, right? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Align it.
There you go. Yeah, at least it's quite steady, is it?
2 weeks later, Akbar is ready to unveil his idea. I've invited safety expert Professor Yap Fook Fa and Alex Yam, a member of parliament who's been advocating the safer transport of migrant workers since 2012. I'm hoping our idea will impress them enough so that it can spark the conversation for change.
We have 3 concepts over here, accompanied by these respective physical prototypes. The inspiration was by looking at car child seats, aeroplane seats, and rear folding bench seats from off-road vehicles. Child car seat have the isofix mount where you can securely mount the child seat into the car. We intend to mount this along the perimeter of the lorry bed. That's how the lorry canopies are being secured right now.
The 3 concepts we have here are the basic, the foldaway, and the bodyguard. They sound pretty cool, but will their feasibility match up?
Is there any reason why you decided on 3 prototypes?
We realize that cost is a very important factor. So we try to make it a concept that you can implement with as little cost as possible by nudging the safety factor one by one. So as you see from the most basic concept on your left, all the way until the concept over here, which it gets safer, but at the same time, the cost gets higher and also the multi-purposeness of the lorry gets reduced. Yeah.
So as you progress from the basic model all the way to the more advanced models, the cost increases, the safety also increases, but the number of ways you can use the lorry actually goes down.
First up, the basic, a seat with a waist belt. It's the cheapest, but is it enough to keep our workers safe?
The occupants were kept in place. They did not fly out of the seats. But bear in mind that this is a model, so it did not mimic the actual weight of the passengers and also the momentum of the actual collision in a real lorry or truck.
Prof is right too, but it does show that the tumbling around and the possible of multiple injuries because of that might be greatly reduced because of the restraint.
Next up the price tier, we have the foldaway. It's a foldable seat with a lap seat belt plus a handle to hold on to when it gets rocky.
Oh, so it looks like they all still
There,
find their seats. That's a good sign.
But probably still traumatized, I guess.
The flatbed have a handle in between that's not retractable. That could take away some functionality. The other concern with that design I have is that compared to the first one where it's literally soft body to soft body, you now have additional points of impact, especially at your hip area where they are seated. And that could result in other forms of injury.
Also, I think the backrest might not have much of a function for the side-facing seats because you're moving sideways, and so this motion back and forth is not being cushioned by the backrest. Then the other thing that the model is not showing is the potential injuries due to the sideways motion and the lap belt. So because what you have is a rigid body model. So when the body bends sideways by a lot, right, it could create injuries to the soft tissues or internal organs, which is not demonstrable.
And lastly, the Bodyguard, an upgrade from the foldaway with a 3-point seat belt, which explains the higher price.
They didn't move around that much. It still looks quite stable. Do you think a 3-point seat belt will actually help a little bit more in this kind of circumstance?
So the 3-point seat belt design is very effective in preventing injuries in passengers in cars, but only for forward-facing seats. They have not been shown to be effective in side-facing seats in frontal collisions. And there's a potential injury to the neck in the collision, okay, in sideways motion. The other thing to consider is for an average adult involved in a collision like 60 kilometers per hour, the kind of forces that the seatbelt has to impose to restrain the passenger is about 2 tons or 30 G. So we're going to make sure that the anchorage points are rigid enough to restrain the kind of forces. So that's additional cost.
Would it help if they wore safety equipment on them?
Yeah, one of the options to explore may be safety helmets or even like inflatable vests that what some motorcyclists do. If they get thrown out, they inflate.
So after looking at all our prototypes, do you think this solution would be sustainable and feasible?
Well, I think it's a good conversation starter. It's a step in the right direction. A lorry was never designed to have crumple zones at the side. So even with the restraints, you would still have other sorts of injuries.
There are other safety risks that have been introduced, so we have to be very mindful of those.
What we really need to address is this cost struggle in the conversations of migrant workers' safety. Some companies' experience in transporting workers in buses actually hasn't elevated their costs so much, especially if smaller companies work together and say we're in the same location, same dormitory, we can share those resources. So that's one direction we can move towards.
After experiencing for myself what it's like to ride at the back of a lorry, I do think we can do better for our foreign workers, because I can tell you, it does not feel safe at all. But the good news is that a review is underway by the Transport Ministry to enhance current safety measures. Now, I may not have come up with the perfect solution to this issue, but at least I know the authorities are looking into it. Because one thing is clear, riding at the back of lorries puts lives in danger.